What's going on, everybody? Gustav the 13th here with another video checking out the V2 Gundam for the week of the 26th of March 2026. Happy Spring Fest as well, everybody. This is our opening suit for the events. It is a 750 raid, 3 priority, space compatibility, 5-star suit, usual kind of stuff here. I guess this is supposed to be our advancement into the next era, kind of. Now, there's a couple things about this suit that are a little bit odd. There's some things about it that are pretty cool, and in the long and short of it, I do think it's gonna be a good mainstay, but I don't really think it's gonna replace anything super duper hard. But let's get into it here. So we got the BR 3k damage right out of the gate with this, ammo of 8, range of 350, and actually, interestingly enough, this has the same range as the bazooka, which we'll get into in a minute. But also has its own multi-launcher, 250 extra stun with that on the bottom undersling there. This is primarily something you're going to be swinging around a lot with, though. We got the Beam Saber single, 2900 damage there with a cooldown time of 2 seconds. And the Beam Saber times 2, actually flat 3k damage with a cooldown time of 2 and a charge time of 1, because this does have a heavy attack. As well as some Vulcans. These are pretty much 15 shots per stun on anything that doesn't have damage control. As well as 170 power, ammo for up to 70, and a range of 200 meters. So in general, very mid-rangey when it comes to all of its reach. This also has a 2-burst shot for the charge shot ammo type here. Heat rate base here, but also 100%. So you charge it, you fire it, you get the heavy stagger. This also has a little bit of an area around it as well. But moving on from that real quick, we'll get into the stats here. 24,500 for the HP. All of its defense is just across the board 28 baseline. Range strength is 37, as well as melee strength being 38. Typical Gundam stats, right? Super balanced, super across the board, very even keel. Then we get into the maneuverability, and that's where you can tell that this is a raid. So we get 150 for the movement speed. Top speed for high-speed movement is 235, thruster gauge of 85, and a turning speed of 93. That's a lot of turn right out of the gate, dude. It's kind of crazy. Part slots then, talking 21, 18, and 18 for close, medium, and long. Not too shabby, you would hope so for a 5-star fucking suit, right? We also have our stats, or not stats, but our skills here. Assault Booster 3, Melee Composite System 2, High Spec Ambac 2, Maneuver Armor 4, High Performance Thruster Control System. So landing after high speed movement can be cancelled with the high speed movement of lower thruster consumption, and the high speed movement can be performed again. High speed movement is slightly less thruster consumption, and additional actions can be performed while jumping as well. Also reduces thruster use by 50% during high speed movement in the air. Heavy attack, aerial melee system 2, power accelerator 2, so you can get out of clashes and start swinging on people again. Anti-blast stabilizer 1, flat booster 1, raise counter 1, pursuit melee auxiliary program 2, so you get an extra 20% when you start laying into people that are already on the floor. Left arm special defense system. So this is a little bit weird, because that left arm that they're talking about is supposed to be like a beam shield / projector. It doesn't do anything. It's just not connected to the power. It's not a shield, it's just a buffer. So reduces HP loss by 30% when weapons are equipped to the left arm are attacked. Also reduces stagger from cumulative damage. The damage is taken is 200 or 2000 or less. Apart from toppling attacks or tackles, reaction is reduced. So this reminds me a little bit of the Bulgy having its big shield buffers. It was something kind of like that. But it's supposed to have more of a function than just being a buffer on your arm. Long range adapter is also a very odd choice. This is something that we saw, I think, on the Jester Cannon, and the description kind of is weird because you only have technically 2 range things outside of your Vulcans. But when in sniper mode, which why would you ever be in sniper mode as a raid, you can use the left stick to zoom in with 4 times up to 4 with the scope, display the radar, and change weapons. When dealing damage in sniper mode, the enemy unit's ballistic resistance and beam resistance are partially nullified, and your unit's turning performance increases by 20. Note that weapons cannot be changed while in the prone position. So why would you be crouched anyway? I don't know if they expect you to try to just be like some weird turret like the Isolde or something. You're just gonna scope in real quick to get that extra nullification or whatever for the heavy stagger and then move in. But that's a weird thing to put on a raid. But beyond that, we have a special emergency evasion system. So this is something a little bit neat for the fact that we're going to get into the M drive unit in a minute. But this is related to that. So press the accelerate button and tries to perform an emergency evasion with a reduced drain on the thrusters. If certain attacks are taken while evading, thruster recovery speed and thruster overheat recovery speed temporarily increase. And you'll see it say like cooldown and stuff over your thing, which is pretty neat. When using a skill that generates wings of light, so when you're actually in your M drive control system or whatever, the wings are generated if an emergency evasion is made, and enemies making contact with the wings or your mobile suit are staggered and take damage. So the damage, and I'll try to get it on screen when we go into the practice, is pretty much 3,500 flat. Definitely nothing to sneeze at. And like it says, if they make contact with you while you're rolling away, they'll bounce off you and it'll deflect you. It won't completely knock them over like a parry, but you know, in lieu of using the big hunking piece of metal on your arm as a parry, you got that. The M drive unit control system. Press the touchpad to activate the skill, boosting attack and mobility. Reducing thruster consumption and high-speed movement, reducing stagger buildup during the high-speed movement and enabling the use of compatible weapons during high-speed movement. When moving forward with a certain amount of time and high speed, wings of light are generated, staggering and damaging all enemies or units or wings or the wings collide with. And forcing those enemies to consume a set amount of thruster. That's also an interesting thing, that it's eating thruster for that kind of collision. And that's them taking that. When activating on the ground, you will enter flight mode. Continuous actions can be performed mid-air with all actions synced up to the reticle, so space movement, essentially. And damage reaction reduced, but the attack boosting effect is lowered. Auto thruster consumption and recovery will be halted when the skill is activated, and the skill will be temporarily disabled if cancelled. Can be used underwater. So that's going to be the big thing. Trying to be in that Minosky craft, especially because in this version, unlike the regular V, you actually SIP boost pretty well in this thing. And especially because they give you a pretty high baseline to work with to begin with when it comes to your thruster gauge. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go look at these. So for the skills here, force deploy, because it is a 5-star suit. You got +1 to melee modifier, -3% to recovery time from thruster overheat. And complex expansion here at 4,600. For the unlockables, then we have +5 to melee modifier and reduces melee damage to mobile suit HP by 10% when toppled. So you have your own defense system for that, which is interesting because it's going to be just lopping off like 5% off of them doing it to you. You know, if you're getting attacked by other V2s and shit. But not too shabby. Let's put this bad boy into practice and check it out. That was actually faster once. That's crazy. Okay, it's basic stuff, right? Get that shot in there. And so that's 7. Let's check how much it takes. So 2 shots there. No really big, like, chunk of ammo for it, and there's no 2-tiered charging for that. Regular kind of stuff for the grenade, just an extra little pop to try to keep them still. The bigger thing here, look at the charge time for that. That's slow. But much like the 3A, it does have a pretty big area for that damage. Something to keep in mind for sure when you're throwing that down. For the most part, you're probably going to be doing it from altitude, you know, using flaps, all that other stuff. But you know, be careful of your allies, things like that, or don't, because most of the time you're probably going to lead them with some crazy melee anyway. Let's show off this. Swing bada. Legitimately just clasps them together and just does a big old swing. You stop very abruptly when you're not in the air, but you get a lot of momentum and blowback when you're in your Minosky craft. The blowback from that in general is pretty intense. We didn't see it the first time when it was on the ground because it popped its skill. But yeah, very potent. As you can see, as usual here when it comes to Minosky craft stuff, you do not burn boost when you are just neutral moving. I will say that the swings normally are very, you know, kind of typical for what we're seeing. Also, no crazy combo controller, so you're only doing 2 swings per weapon. But a lot of this is definitely just trying to hit from weird angles with that heavy stagger or that heavy swing. There are some folks that are even trying to get 2 heavy swings in per using like the heavy stagger and all that other stuff to try to get some lead in, which is pretty nice. The other thing to keep in mind, that skill can be used again, so you're pretty much at like 20 seconds or 18 seconds there, as you can see, for the cooldown. That's supposed to be their means of balancing it. I'll be honest, it's a little bit frustrating. Obviously, you can still boost and you can still do your, you know, flaps and all that stuff in the meantime, so you can still do regular shit with that. Just keep in mind that you're not going to be able to do the heavy swing mid-air like that normally. You're gonna have to be on the ground when you're not using your M drive. Speaking of the other stuff for the M drive, you do make contact there. It's a little bit dangerous, right? Because you can kind of sideswipe people and get some damage, but if you're not doing that, then you're typically having to just shove your face into them and hope that you recognize when the contact is happening so that you can get into your neutral, assuming that they haven't tried to tackle or stop you somehow already. And there's gonna be a lot of times where you want to try to get back into your flight mode, but you can't, because even though your boost is back, that cooldown is gonna hold you back. Little things like that are gonna be definitely a little bit frustrating. But all of this is mostly a setup for that big heavy swing and just trying to get in there and dig in some guts. The bigger thing for this also in general is going to be the fact that you got space movement, which means you can kind of hit people high and low in weird ways as long as you're approaching properly. That being said, that's asking a lot, especially considering that everything else typically has flaps too, and generally having a lot of stuff locked onto you that's going to give you trouble. But it's doable. It's not really my cup of tea per se when it comes to, you know, suppression and stuff. We had a game before I was able to get on this because this is sponsored by Asian Noob Sama when it comes to the actual suit selection itself. But I was running in the double Zeta and was hassling a lot of people. That felt pretty good. When we're doing our dailies on our regular account, we'll be seeing a lot of that as well, just seeing how we can handle it. But last thing, it's got an okay amount of accumulation. As you can see, the grenade doing a pretty gross amount. Visible chunk out of the ship itself. The heavy also pretty fast, so if you really do need to get some extra damage in there, that's not too bad of an option, because you did see that visible tick as it made contact. But for the most part, it's going to be the grenade. Just throwing that in every once in a while you deal with other stuff going around. Using the charge shot is honestly kind of a waste, because it's mostly about the potential of the heavy stagger. But as you can see, another pretty visible chunk out of it there. Now, to be honest with you, I kind of gelled with this a little bit after a second, but I think it was just because we got some more active teams at the end, because we did have a fair amount of losses in our first few runs before we finally got in there. But we are going to put one of those example matches right around here. Alright. Here we go. Jeez.
方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。中継地点の制圧確認しました。中継地点の制圧確認しました。
Ow!
限界ですよ。
My bad.
モビルスーツがやられた。味方が再出撃の場所と方法を選んでください。再出撃お願いします。
Down.
集結要請が来てますよ。援護行きましょう。味方がやられた。
Oh god, right as I'm about to shoot. What the fuck?
味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。限界。味方がやられた。味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。味方がやられた。再出撃お願いします。大丈夫ですよ。
No, I grabbed it anyway.
モビルスーツがやられた。再出撃お願いします。味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。味方がやられた。味方が敵モビルスーツをやりましたよ。敵が中継地点を制圧しています。作戦時間残り2分。拠点の重要度が上昇しました。
Can't see anything.
味方がやられた。残り1分。迷ってなくいられませんよ。
Any of them particularly hurt? Oof. Space movement. Oh wow. He just confirmed like a bunch of shit on there. Like mostly using that to just do like neutral set interrupts and stuff in that case. Alright. That makes a little bit more sense. And that was our chosen run in the V2. In general, you definitely are going to have to be a little less self-conscious to get a lot of the damage out here. It's very disruptive when it comes to how big its swings kind of are. The heavy swing is definitely your big thing, especially with the blowback. You're gonna be juggling people, you know, foe and friend alike, unless you're really trying to hold back. But the more you hold back, the more time you're gonna get spent having people focus on you because they don't want that smoke. Especially because you're gonna be floating around with what's essentially just a heavy stagger in your pocket. You know, in a way that's probably a little bit safer than even the Hexa and a lower cost. God, I can only imagine what that's gonna be like when SU starts to get level boosted. Especially with this turning around, but like, in some ways, this feels like an upgrade, and in other ways, it feels like you're taking a few steps back, because even though it does have a lot of baseline high-speed movement, a lot of the other suits are just raw dogging it with flaps. And in that regard, they have a lot more momentum than you do, in terms of approach and just raw press and aggression. But being able to do stuff at odd angles, you know, trying to use the momentum and carry from your heavy, among other things. Keep in mind that that is not like hyper saber size. It's just clasping two smaller sabers together. And you're not going to get a lot of reach. If you can sideswipe people and know where they're going to be going, then you can probably take advantage of that a little bit more. But, you know, be careful. But I do genuinely wonder where this is going to go later on in the week. There were some people that were hoping that this was going to be a very aggressive answer to suppressing, like, the F91s and the silhouettes. And I don't know if that's just like a higher rating kind of thing where they're having a lot of trouble with both of those. But, you know, at least around A+ and all that, you have a lot of full cloths. You still have double Zetas and things being thrown around when it's basic match so that they can chunk through the base and kind of keep people from just buzzing around each other all the time. So I'll be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised at this being a staple and an end-all when it comes to the raid options at this cost, because they are still a little bit scant. A lot of them have been beaten out by the adjusted suits, and because it's still a majority general kind of cost range for 750. And I think this, outside of our G Penelope situations, is the first time that we have Minosky craft that necessarily works quite this well, especially with the Wings of Light and stuff being included in there. So that is the long and short of it for the V2. There's a lot that you can do with this shoot, but there's not really a lot going on with it. Obviously, there's a couple variants of the V2 that we'll probably be getting in the future, buster parts and all that good stuff. And hopefully we'll see some action from the shield as a shield and not just a hunk of buffer metal in the future when that happens. Do I think that's going to be a support? I hope not. Probably will. I'm guessing it's more so going to be a general, but we'll just have to see. But let me know if you guys actually got this and how you feel about it in the comments. We'll be seeing this running around pretty prominently during this week, although I do not have it on the main account, so it's mostly going to be us just fighting against it. But hopefully I'll see you for those dailies. And until next time, this is Goose on the 13th. I'll talk to you all in the next video.